You're listening to Right Here, Right Now, live Buffalo football talk presented by Batavia Daily News and Livingston County News.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Right Here, Right Now, live Buffalo football talk. I'm your host, Alex Brasky, alongside my co-host, Ajay Cybulski, here for the Batavia Daily News and Livingston County News. Each week, we'll discuss Buffalo's favorite football team, along with all the comings and goings from Orchard Park. What's up, AJ? Tell the people what we have in store for them today.
Yeah, really looking forward to the show Right Here, Right Now, live Buffalo football talk. It should be a fun pod to begin, and throughout the course of the whole season, a lot of exciting things planned. But in terms of the inaugural episode here tonight, we will be bringing on three guests: Matt Parrino from Syracuse.com, Tim Graham from The Athletic, and Del Reid, the Buffalo Bills Fan of the Year in 2023, to cover a plethora of things, including the NFL draft, break that down. Obviously, that's tomorrow night, so that's a big deal right now. Some reactions to the press conferences from One Bills Drive during voluntary OTAs last Thursday. Some Bills ownership talk, obviously reports from Tim Graham from The Athletic, who is a guest on this show. 25% of the team is up for sale. And then talk about some potential Bills targets as well. So we'll dive into that. Again, Alex, I'm really looking forward to this. The big thing for, I think, both of us is we are going to try and bring the scope of the fan base to the show and really try and dive into what the fans want to listen to, want to hear. And I think that's going to be a big focus of the show each week as we really get into the season, training camp, whatever that may be, bringing the fans the information that they want discussed. And, again, feel free to share stories. Always feel free to comment, be interactive as much as you can so we can really get this thing moving and going in the right direction.
Absolutely. Exciting times here at the Batavia Daily and Livingston County News as we're really trying to expand our reach in the Buffalo sports scene, covering the Bills as we have for many years. Also, a little bit of Sabres coverage here and there, along with our top-notch local coverage that we've been providing for years and years and years. But AJ, today is about this show. It's about the Bills. It's about the upcoming draft. You laid out the other topics that we're going to discuss coming up over the next, about hour or so. But let's start with the state of the Bills. A lot of turnover this offseason. It hasn't been the status quo as we've seen the past number of years. Obviously, the big news, Stefon Diggs traded to the Houston Texans, but also several other veteran contributors moving on, whether it be being released by the team or signing elsewhere. So certainly a transitional offseason for the Bills. And the question on everybody's mind is really, is this team still a Super Bowl contender? And for my money, I put them right in the conversation. You have a player like Josh Allen. You have the coaching acumen of Sean McDermott and the up-and-coming staff members at his disposal. New offensive coordinator Joe Brady, who did a solid job with Josh Allen in that offense, taking over on an interim basis last year. Bobby Babich coming in, putting his flavor into the mix here. So I think the future remains bright for this team. Maybe a slight step back in terms of the consistency that you'll see from them early in the year as they look to go through some growing pains with a new roster, some new pieces in key positions. But I think when it comes down to it, this is a Super Bowl contender. That much has not changed. You still have Josh Allen. You're still ready to compete for a championship.
Yeah, and to add to that point about being young, the Bills offense, if you look at this team from offensive line to running backs to receivers, wideouts, quarterback, Josh Allen's 27. The offensive line, Deion Dawkins is getting a little bit older in his early 30s, but again, he just is coming off the best season of his career. He's feeling great. He spoke about that all last season during the media portions. And then you look at Spencer Brown, who's still ascending, coming into a fourth year. Well, he really rebounded in year 3, coming off a sophomore season where he kind of struggled due to injury in the back pain that he was dealing with. And then again, you're Connor McGovern, who you signed as a left guard, probably slated into that center spot. But yeah, I think the Bills are right there in terms of on offense of being still a top 3 unit. Again, it'll all depend really tomorrow night. I know it's not fully, the offense isn't fully figured out to this point, but the draft, the free agency, still there's some options. OBJ, Tyler Boyd, there's still some options to add there to round out that wide receiver room, which is obviously the biggest need. So you look at Joe Brady's young. It's kind of the year of the youth, Alex. And then defense, Poyer, obviously gone. Micah Hyde still prospering what he should do. Obviously, that charity softball game coming up here in mid-May that he's returning to Buffalo should be a great event. But you look at the defense, Taylor Rapp, who shined last year, and now is not shined, I shouldn't say, came on as of late last season and is now getting another
certainly filled the role they needed him to fill down the stretch of that season.
Correct. And then you bring in Mike Edwards from Kansas City, who has that experience, that pedigree, very fast, very physical, has some great production with Kansas City. And then you look at the linebacking core again with Milano coming back, returning from that injury, with Terrell Bernard, who's really ascending and did what last year most people thought he could never do. He honestly produced more than Tremaine Edmonds in terms of the splash plays that Terrell Bernard brought to that defense. And then across the defensive line, you bring in Austin Johnson from LA, Deshaun Williams from Carolina to kind of fortify the loss of Tim Settle and Jordan Phillips. Obviously, Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones. So if you look at this roster, I know I'm ranting on, but this is kind of my first time to talk about it. I still think with the coaching style of Sean McDermott and Bobby Babich, like you mentioned, on that defensive side of the ball, this Bills defense, although it's lacking that star power, I still think if they can create splash plays and play good in key moments, which again, McDermott's defense has struggled to play good in key moments at times in the playoffs, but in the regular season, they've shown up. I think this team is a playoff team. And again, like you said, there might be more inconsistency, but with Josh Allen under center and this young roster and the year of the youth, like I said, I think the Bills have every chance to make a run in the AFC and make a run for the Lombardi Trophy.
Yeah, I think we're right on the same page there. I think there has been some changes that you will see an impact early in the year. Like I said, maybe some growing pains, but I think overall this team is still built to contend for a championship at the very least. Before we move on to the draft, just your thoughts on the Stefon Diggs trade, a 2024 sixth-round pick and a 2025 fifth-rounder in exchange for a second-round selection in 2025. No help this year, but you lose some of that money off the cap in future years, and I think that's really what Brandon Beane was going for with this move. You don't want to be tied to a player the way that the Bills were tied to Stefon Diggs this year and into the future. And I think getting out from under that contract was obviously the goal for Beane and company, moving on from their former number one wide receiver. And it remains to be seen if or how the Bills will replace his production. Obviously, a great start to the season last year, not so good finish to the season, but his production since he came to Buffalo just speaks for itself. He and Josh Allen have ascended together in their roles within the offense. So Brandon Beane commented and says he's not so sure that a team needs a number one wide receiver to succeed. I'm not so sure the fan base agrees with him, but we'll see what the Bills decide to do in the upcoming draft. Before we look ahead, just your thoughts on the Bills moving on from a leader within that locker room and a fierce contributor for that offense.
Yeah, I want to preface this with Stefon Diggs had the greatest 4-year run, probably as a receiver, 3-year, 4-year run, whatever it is, in Buffalo Bills history. I think, over 100 receptions each season, over 1,000 yards each season. So I want to say that his impact on the offense was astronomically important to what Josh Allen has become. Now, I will say Josh is now in a new phase of his career. And when asked at the press conference during voluntary OTAs, someone asked him that question in the media, and he kind of alluded, I guess you could say that. Like, I guess this is kind of the new chapter. So for Diggs, I think he was a number one guy that the Bills really needed at that point in time. He produced really well. He's now in his low 30s. Obviously, trading a guy that was $31 million in dead cap to eat that, there was obviously some issues probably going on in terms of locker room fiasco or whatever the culture precedent that's set by Sean McDermott there. But in terms of on-the-field stuff, Stefon Diggs was truly an impactful player. And again, his leadership did show, especially throughout the first 2 years, I think more so. His leadership really showed on that field, and that players do respect him. And I think players always will. Obviously, it didn't end on the great note. They didn't get it done. But Stefon Diggs' impact was huge. And again, this could be a whole, shift in what the Bills' mindset is on offense. Maybe they do go with a multifaceted attack where you're drafting 2 rookie receivers and you're bringing in Dalton Kincaid and you bring in James Cook and Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir, all those guys to kind of spread the ball out where, okay, maybe it was more Diggs-oriented under Dable and Dorsey, where defenses were really saying, make us beat you without Diggs. Like, make the Bills. They were trying to make the Bills beat themselves or beat the other team with Diggs. Sorry, climbing around here. But basically what I'm saying is
I'm following along.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. The Bills are trying to implement, maybe we'll see in the draft, because they could trade up for Remo Dunze and that could all go to waste. But what I'm saying is there's going to be a multifaceted attack, and Josh Allen's going to be looking for the right option, the correct option, the guy that gets open and value yards after the catch.
And moving on to the draft, before we welcome our first guest, Matt Parrino of Syracuse.com and the Shout podcast. Who's it going to be, AJ? I know that you've had your opinions on Twitter. Everybody seems to be floating out names this time of year, and it really just becomes clouded with how many names go out there that Bills fans want the team to select with their first-round pick. But a lot of people on the wide receiver train. We'll talk to Del Reid later on in this show and engage his perspective from a fan's perspective in guiding that wide receiver train, as many have. How do you view this? Should they trade up? Do you think that they should trade back? Where does the value lie, in your opinion? Obviously looking to replace some of that production from Stephon Diggs, but how they go about doing that really remains to be seen from Bean and company.
Yeah, I think there's multiple options. I think you have to go like Brandon Bean probably is doing with an open mind. Who knows on draft night? Does the deal actually get done if they trade up? Can they trade back? I think there's a multitude of options the Buffalo Bills can take to fill that void at wide receiver. Obviously, some names. I'm really narrowing it down to two. Like, if I was to bet on it right now, I would think Xavier Worthy from Texas ran a 4.19 at the NFL Combine, broke the record. Speedster, lacks some physicality at the point of attack, but again, his ability to route run is actually, I think, underappreciated at this point, according to what I've read from many NFL draft analysts. Or Adonai Mitchell, another very polarizing figure, has the diabetes issue where if he's not taken care of, in the Go Long article from Tyler Dunn, if he's not taken care of, that he kind of has some attitude issues and some character issues. But 11 touchdowns, over 850 yards in Texas. The production isn't great, but he has the ability to take the top off the defense, 4.33 40-yard dash. So those are two guys for me that kind of make sense that I think will be in that 28 range where the Bills could attack. But yeah, man, I'm pretty confident that the Bills do add a receiver, whether it's in the top 60, top 30, whatever it may be. I would say in the top 40, I'm pretty confident the Bills do go receiver and fill that void left by Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, certainly something to keep an eye on as we welcome in our first guest to the Right Here, Right Now podcast. None other than Matt Parrino, reporter for Syracuse.com and the host of the Shout podcast alongside his co-host, Ryan Talbot. You can follow him on X at Matt Parrino and listen to Shout on all audio platforms and view the show live on YouTube every week. What's going on, Matt? Draft week, excuse me.
It feels like draft year, man. I'm ready to get to Thursday night, get this thing kind of going. We've done all the mocks. Well, we will have done all the mocks here over the next 15 hours or so, and it's just time to see who they're going to pick and dive into what this roster is really going to look like, or pretty close to what it's going to look like.
And AJ and I discussed some of the needs to begin the show. Obviously, wide receiver, the top need on a lot of fans' minds. Forget individual prospects here. From your vantage point, what do you view as the Bills' most pressing need? And if it is a wide receiver, maybe go a little bit in depth in the style of wide receiver that the team might be searching for come round one.
Yeah, I think receiver is the easiest place to go and the right place to go because Stephon Diggs was such a big part of what they've done over the last couple of years. And, you know, they're reimagining what this thing looks like. I think changing on the fly. We haven't heard from Joe Brady this offseason, and a lot of times I think that's by design. We haven't heard from Bobby Babbitt yet either. And I'm very interested to see how much of the offense is changing in the likeness of Joe Brady. I mean, it's been the Brian Daboll system now going back to Josh Allen's rookie season. And it kind of morphed a little bit with Ken Dorsey. They kept a lot of things the same. But I wonder how much now are they changing it? And you have Curtis Samuel on the roster. You have Khalil Shakir, which I think there's a lot of, you know, different takes on what he potentially could be in this offense and maybe a little bit more boundary type potential than people really realize. But in Carolina, when Curtis Samuel was so good, you know, he was playing with DJ Moore. And I think having that bona fide number one, even though that Brandon Bean says you don't necessarily need one in 2024, I do think that that's somewhere that they're going to look to add. Now, there's a couple of guys that I think fit the bill. Brian Thomas Jr., who I think is the cleanest, most high upside, highest ceiling kind of guy to come in, win down the field, has that sub 4.38 speed. He's in a kind of a pile of players with Adonai Mitchell. I heard AJ bring up Xavier Worthy. Obviously, all three of those guys, if you walk out of this draft with one of those guys, I think you're really excited about what this offense could look like. And then there's the piece of it that's a little bit of the unknown. How do they view Dalton Kincaid in Joe Brady's offense? Because if they view him as weapon one, I don't think they necessarily need to be as aggressive. Now, the noise is that the Bills are aggressively going to be calling around to try to trade up and get a wide receiver in this draft. If that ends up being the case, I think that we'll learn a little bit more about maybe how they view Dalton Kincaid and maybe what the expectations maybe being a little bit tempered in 2024 for him, maybe not taking that next step to become that Travis Kelce light that everybody was talking about draft time last year.
Yeah, Matt, thank you for coming on again. I really appreciate it. Speaking back to the draft again, with what the Bills could do, stay at 28, moving back, trading back. For you, where does the value lie with that? I know Bean mentioned at the press conferences on Thursday during voluntary OTAs that last draft, they had a really big opportunity to trade back at 25 or 26, wherever they were picking. But instead, obviously, Josh Allen sent the text out on Kincaid. Bean made it work. They went and got a very good pass catcher in the draft. Where do you think the Bills value this? Because they could go a multitude of ways. Does Joe Brady like having multiple weapons at disposal and trading back and double dipping? Or do they feel like they need that number one X boundary guy and trade up to the top 10 and kind of give up multiple first to go get a guy like Rome Odunze? Where do you stand with that? And what do you think the Bills could potentially do on Thursday night?
For a long time, I think the trade up into the top 10 felt like a bit too aggressive and costing the Bills too many assets. But the more I've kind of sat with it over the last couple of weeks, the more, if it makes sense, like they've added capital in the Diggs trade. So if you trade your first round for next year, which if you're the Bills, you're hoping that's still on the back end of the first round. You have Minnesota's second rounder where if it's in the top half of the second round, you can be aggressive next year and maybe move into the first round if you have somebody that you really like. And we've seen over the last couple of years, I mean, teams have added important impact players on day two. I almost feel like having a bunch of day two picks is kind of like a luxury because there's that, like, to your point, like when it comes to value, Brandon Beane said he's got more first round grades this year than I don't want to say normal, but definitely from last year. But it's not 28 players, he said. And so if there's that kind of wiggle room and that gap in terms of the drop off in talent, I'd much rather have my pick of a couple of different players on day two where you have multiple darts than, trading up for somebody that you're going to probably have to spend a ton of assets. I mean, Rome Odunze, from everybody that I've talked to that I really trust on this, they're saying that in any other year, this guy is the number one wide receiver on the board. So I think teams that are going to be in that slot, if you're trying to go up, they're going to make you pay as if you were going up for the top wide receiver in this draft. And, who knows? It could cost multiple ones. Are the Bills willing to get rid of that? I can't see Brandon Beane sitting there and being comfortable giving up multiple ones to go up and get a player that, for as much as people loved Odunze, it's still a dart at the end of the day. I mean, we've seen first round wide receivers bust. I don't think that he's going to, but there's just so much in play. And then it's like, if you get down to 9 and say that he's on the board, and then you have a deal in place to want to go up, and you're the Bears, at the end of the day, that might all be well and good, but I still don't want to give that pick up because I want to pair Odunze with Caleb Williams and give him a bona fide number one, pair him with DJ Moore. They have Keenan Allen. Like, that pull might be tough because if you're the Bears, you're saying we got our guy, Caleb Williams, and we're going to be good, and we're not going to be picking in this range again. And what has Brandon Beane historically said? I don't want to be in the range to draft a top-tier wide receiver, like a Jamar Chase was the guy that came up. So it's so interesting, and there's pros and cons to all of it. Trading up, trading down, staying at 28. I think there could be some value there, especially on the defensive side of the ball, depending on how the draft goes. But hey, we don't have to ask these questions for much longer. We'll start getting some answers.
Right. Can't wait for tomorrow night. All this speculation ends. Finally, we get some picks on the board. And AJ's been on the Roma Dunze train all offseason long, I think, on social media. I think that's one of his favorite prospects. But the Bills don't have a third-round pick this year as of yet, so I think maybe that trade back might be something Bean looks to do, maybe gain that capital in the middle rounds. I know Joe Marino, listening to the Locked On Bills podcast, he said that third round might be the sweet spot of this year's draft, so maybe Bean moves back to try to get a pick in that third round. But outside of the prospects coming out of the draft, do you think the Bills might dip their toe in the free agent market, maybe grab a wide receiver still available, a Boyd, Michael Thomas, Odell Beckham Jr., 3 receivers that AJ spotlighted in an article on the Daily News Online.com and in print today for the Daily News? Do you think that they might dip their toe in that market at all, as we kind of saw them do last year with Leonard Floyd late with that post-June 1st signing?
I definitely think that could be in play. I think the money is going to be the big thing, because I brought up Odell Beckham Jr. and it's funny, there's this chasm in the fan base. Like, after all of the dance that they did like a little over a year ago, I think that there's a little bit of OBJ fatigue. But I still think that, like, from a fit standpoint and what he's able to do, especially now 2 years removed from that injury, and if the price is right, I think you definitely, if you're Brandon Beane, you consider it. Obviously, he's close to Von Miller. That's probably going to be something that, if you're Von Miller, you're probably selling him, like, come in here. You're going to be able to get a chunk of those targets that, left with Stephon Diggs going to Houston. And that's what he didn't have in Baltimore last year, is like that big opportunity to be like featured in the offense. They were trying to get their young guy. His name is escaping me right now. Who was their first round pick from last year? The wide receiver. What was his name?
Flowers.
Yes, Zay Flowers. I'm all 2024 wide receiver class, boys. At this point,
I pulled that one out of my what. So
all right, very nice. So I like that idea. Another kind of idea that I was on last offseason was, or maybe might have been 2 off seasons ago, DJ Chark is a guy that's out there, has production in the league, hasn't been as productive the last couple of seasons, but because of that, I think you get him on a cost-controlled 1-year contract, have him come in here and just be kind of like on the, the outside looking in, going in training camp. And if he kind of comes in here, picks up the playbook, and, you want to kind of throw him into a larger role, if you don't address wide receiver in a big way in the draft, that could be another option as well.
Now, going back to last week's press conference again, Matt, when Brandon Beane was at the podium, he spoke about, and again, this could be smoke, so I want to know your opinion, about wide receiver 1 not being essential to success because of Josh Allen's kind of ascension into this quarterback he now is today. What did you read into that of those comments? Because I know it'll all get figured out tomorrow. We don't know yet what happens, but just your thoughts on those comments. And do you think that you agree with the sentiment from Brandon Beane? I
agree with it to a degree. And I'm the one who asked the question. So like, that's why I asked it, because I do agree with the
straight
model.
From the horse's mouth here, AJ.
Like the Green Bay Packers, the way that they've built their wide receiver room, like that was one of the best offenses in the league in December last year, with basically a rookie quarterback in Jordan Love. I know he's been in the league a couple of years, but that was his first big chance. And, I think they were 3rd in the league with 32 touchdown passes. And it was an offense that on any given week, I felt like you had to figure out who you're going to deal with. 1 week it was Christian Watson. 1 week it was Romeo Doubs. 1 week it was Jaden Reed. I mean, I feel like they built a nice collection of talent there, guys that do different things. And there's an advantage in that. I think Tank Dell and Nico Collins, really nice combination, are guys that day 2, day 3 picks there. The guy that just got the richest contract in NFL history for wide receiver today, an hour ago, Amon-Ra St. Brown, was drafted in the 4th round. So I think you could find, I think the better way to kind of look at this is, do you need a number 1 wide receiver? Yes. But do you have to get that receiver in the 1st round? I don't think that you do. There's so many examples around the league. And, oh, by the way, the Bills just traded away a guy that was their number 1 for 4 years that was drafted in the 5th round.
Now, Matt, before we wrap up, just wanted to get your perspective on a recent story reported by our next guest, Tim Graham of The Athletic, the potential sale of a minority stake in the Bills. Just your thoughts on that as someone who's been around the team for years and knowing what's going on with the team currently, the Pegula family as well. There's been talk sale of the Sabres and all the like. Just your perspective on that potential sale and the news reported, I think, last week.
Obviously the financial ramifications. I mean, I think it was in Tim's story where, Pegula bought the team for around $1.4 billion, and a minority stake that he could sell here years later would yield about the same return, and he'd still be the majority owner of the team. And if you want to talk about
the rich get richer.
Yeah, I mean, like if you want to talk about like what a businessman gets into business to do, I mean, that's knocking it out of the park. The other piece of it for me is like the last time Terry Pegula answered questions about the Buffalo Bills to Buffalo local reporters was 2019 owners meetings. He does not do any media. And I think the more people that get kind of added to the mix, whether it be a minority or owner, people that he've added to his staff, the new COO, Peter Gwelly, before that, Ron Rakuya. I mean, people that can kind of be positioned in the organization to have the kind of role that keeps him away from a microphone. Because for whatever reason, the Bills refused to do it. I think he had the opening statements at the Sabres press conference a couple of days ago.
I was just going to say that.
Didn't answer any questions, right? Like, I mean, that's the model now. So I think there's a lot of benefits. Obviously, there's a lot of financials that come along with owning an NFL team, building a new stadium. I know the fans or the city the state is footing most of the bill, but there's also costs for running an NHL team, which he still reportedly is planning to keep, and renovations to that arena and everything that goes into that. So it makes a lot of sense. There's little things in there that are super interesting. It's like, would you want to pay $1.4 billion to have no final say on anything? Like, I mean, you'd basically just be like, here's $1.4 billion. I just want a seat on the ride. Take me on a ride. Let's go. I love Disney World, man. Guardians of the Galaxy, man. It is money, but I'm not paying $1.4 billion to go on the Guardians of the Galaxy ride anytime I want.
A little pump to the ego included as well, I'm sure.
Exactly. Very good.
Yeah. So thanks for joining us, Matt. Really appreciate you coming on for our first show. Just any final thoughts you have? Tell everybody what you have coming up on Shout throughout the rest of draft week, moving forward, any other projects you're working on for Syracuse.com.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I want to say congratulations to you too for launching this show. It's a great combo. AJ, my guy, my former podcast producer, now on the come up doing big things. And Alex, I've enjoyed getting to know you on the beat over the last couple of years. I'm excited for this show for you guys. And I'm over on X at Matt Parrino, the Shout Bills podcast on all your platforms. Always make sure you watch ours first.
Get some wing nuts.
Right. We still got a ways to go to catch up to the live shows and the following you guys have. But once
come on out, we'll get you on there.
Hey, we've been there before. We enjoy your live shows as much as anybody, and enjoy you for spending some time with us. Thanks a lot, Matt, and we'll catch you next time.
Take care, guys.
All right, bringing in our next guest without further ado, Tim Graham of The Athletic and the host of Tim Graham and Friends. You can follow him on X @ByTimGraham and listen to his podcast TGAF on all audio platforms. What's up, Tim?
Me. I was up late last night doing some work and would normally be maybe sleeping in a little bit, getting ready for the draft, getting my rest in before the big 3-day extravaganza at One Bills Drive.
Well, truly appreciate you carving out some time for us. We had to get you in on the show. You're one of my favorite reporters going back to my days as a fan, and you've really helped me through our discussions in the press room. So thanks again for joining us. Tim, you recently
reported, and I'm grateful for the kind words.
Yeah, no doubt. Tim, you recently reported that the Pegulas are interested in selling 25% of the team, which is what you termed a fluid number, or perhaps your source termed a fluid number. Here's a statement from the Pegulas on the situation. The Pegula family has retained Allen and Company to explore the potential sale of a non-controlling minority interest in the Bills. These discussions only involve the Bills and no other team. No investment would be possible without Terry Pegula and the Pegula family maintaining a controlling interest in the team. Their continued commitment to Western New York, the new Highmark Stadium, our fans, and the other teams in their portfolio remains unchanged. Neither the team nor the Pegula family are able to comment further at this point. So to that, can you rehash what you previously reported and discussed with our pal Jonah Bronstein on your podcast? And also, what more can you tell us perhaps about this developing situation?
Yeah, you kind of covered it pretty well with Matt Parrino there right before I came on. I was listening in, and the Pegulas. Well, I should say Terry Pegula. Everybody's been talking. It used to be Terry and Kim Pegula, but with Kim no longer in her role as co-owner, president, all the different titles and hats that she used to wear, her no longer involved. It's now just referred to as the Pegula family. The children, obviously, they have been all along since Terry Pegula has purchased the Sabres and the Bills. He's made it clear, or at least I should say he's said, because maybe that's another point to make. He's always said that he was going to keep the teams within the family, that the Bills will never move anywhere, and someday his kids will be running these teams. He doesn't say that anymore because, as Matt had mentioned, he doesn't talk anymore. And we're only left with the statements, the things that are prepared for him, whether it comes out in the statement that you just read or prepared remarks that he gave at Lindy Ruff's announcement yesterday. And that's not to say that he doesn't write his own. I'm not saying that he's got people writing these remarks for him, but everything, when I'm saying prepared, as what you're going to say, as us in this in the paragraph business that we're in, that we work at the Paragraph Factory, you're able to put these things down on paper and revise them and bounce them off people. And then you know exactly what you're going to say. And then you sit down and not take any questions. So you have to take them a little bit for what it's worth. But this is the first wrinkle to Terry Pegula's ownership of the Bills and the Sabres. Now he's saying that the Sabres are not included in this. It's been the pounding rumor around Western New York for years that the Sabres are for sale. And whoever it was, whether it was Russ Brandon or Ron Rakuya, now it's Pete Goelli, everybody insisting the Sabres are not for sale. Okay, and I'll take them at their word. However, 2 months ago, 25% of the Bills weren't for sale either. This is you use the word fluid. I think that's great. It's a perfect word. Terry Pegula can wake up tomorrow and decide to do whatever he wants. So we can't any longer. And I was guilty of this up until, just last week, responding to somebody on Twitter, talking in absolutes about Terry Pegula's intentions or his plans. We can't do that anymore. We can only we're in a different world now where everything is a little fuzzier than it used to be. So the idea of the 25%, that's a working number. It's not as though Terry Pegula is going to the market and saying, I'm selling 25%. The way it's been explained to me is that Terry Pegula has a number in mind based on what he wants. I don't know, in terms of money. And reverse engineering it into the valuation, it comes out to about 25%. So that's why 25% is a working number. It's a theoretical number. And for the sake of this discussion, we can kind of stick with it because it's also a pretty easy number when it comes time to do some math.
Right.
Also,
us sports guys sticking to 25, 50, 75, 100. I think that's advisable.
Right. And also for the sake of this discussion, let's just say that the Bills are valued at $4 billion because 25% of a number divisible by 4 is very easy for us. Right. So let's say that roughly $1 billion Terry Pegula may get for this transaction. So it's interesting. And whoever this person is going to want the right of first refusal to buy the remaining 75% of the team if that ever comes to pass. In the event of Terry Pegula's death or his estate decides to sell or his children decide to sell someday, however that secession plan works. So we are going to have potentially the next owner of the Buffalo Bills buying a piece of this team. So there's all kinds of interesting dynamics in play here.
Now, Tim, in your experience, and again, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. Nice seeing you again.
Likewise.
For you, in your experience covering sports world, how common is this for owners to sell, a stake in their business, like the 25% number? And how common or how often do owners usually speak, like in your experience and years prior with past owners, how often do they speak to the media? And is Terry's reluctancy to speak sometimes, and obviously not speaking like Matt Parrino said, since 2019, something that is unfamiliar territory?
I think it's fairly common that owners don't talk. And I go to these owners meetings every year, sometimes more than one owners meeting, but usually the one in the spring is the big one where the coaches and the general managers are present, and you get a little bit more of a shooting gallery for the media to talk to all the different people, similar to the Combine. Combine also was like that. But there are a lot of reporters I talk to at these owners meetings who say this is the only place I can talk to my owner for the entire year. So that's not uncommon. Terry Pegula used to talk at the owners meetings on occasion. His wife did the talking. That's what he was most comfortable with. I don't think she was entirely comfortable with it herself, but she was more willing to do it. So Terry Pegula is in a situation where he was, the word shy was used, reclusive. I don't know, reclusive. I see him around. I say hello to him. He says hello to me at these events. I just saw him the day of the Stephon Diggs trade when we had the news conference down at One Bills Drive. I was getting out of my car and he was sitting with his window down in his car, and I walked past and I'm like, "Hey, Terry, when's your off season start?" He's like, "Never." Little did we know that, he was in the process of maybe selling 25% of his team when I walked past his window. But so he's not running for cover when you see him. He just doesn't want to answer questions. And let's keep in mind that he's not spoken since Kim Pegula had her cardiac arrest and the subsequent brain damage. He doesn't want to have to answer questions about his wife. He didn't want to talk before. Now he really doesn't want to talk. And so it puts fans and the media in a weird position, because you do want to honor privacy. This is a private business, after all. The National Football League, the National Hockey League. This is not, this isn't a utility company. We did not elect Terry Pegula owner of the Buffalo Bills. He bought these teams because he earned it in the oil fields and fracking and doing all his other businesses. And he has a right to run this business however he wants to. That said, sports teams are a community asset. There is a trust. There is psychological and emotional and financial investment involved. You're in many ways a caretaker of this asset. Now, in the event of, say, the Chicago Bears, where it's still in the Hallis McCaskey family, it could, not change hands. But then there are some teams that do change hands. You're a caretaker for now, whether it be your kids are going to own it someday, or this person who has right of first refusal, who's about to buy the 25% or group or whatever. And you do, I think, owe it to the public when you are accepting $850 million of public funding from the state and the county to build your new stadium and whatever else subsidies that come into play, the PSLs. So, yeah, it's a weird situation to try to navigate as a member of the media, as a fan, to want these answers. You're not necessarily owed them in a legal sense. I mean, you can't file a Freedom of Information law request and force Terry Pegula to tell you what his succession plan is with the Bills. So do you have a right to know? I guess not, but you should know. I mean, people should be allowed to know.
So something tells me a Bills fan somewhere has filed that request with the authorities pertaining to Terry Pegula before, just taking the fandom to a whole nother level. Probably.
I mean, we have the Supreme Court is picking up is going to hear a lawsuit that was filed from people in this for taxpayers downstate who don't want money going to the stadium. And there's some statute, there's some bylaws within the New York Constitution about public funding, and all the state courts declined to hear the case, but the Supreme Court's going to listen to it. So, yeah, people do take these things as far as they can. And here we are still in the dark on April 24th.
where I imagine will remain for quite some time. But you mentioned it within your last response, a new stadium really taking shape across from One Bills Drive. Your thoughts on the PSL process, kind of how that's started to roll out. It's kind of been a weird process from my perspective. Exorbitant prices being reported by fans, really seeming to draw the fan base away from moving toward those new PSLs, which could wreak havoc on a lot of longtime fans.
Yeah, the numbers are scary to begin with, and I think that they're going to become more digestible, of course, as we work our way upwards into the, further away from the field and further away from the 50-yard line. These are obviously the big sticker shock numbers for the best seats in the house, the suites, close to the field, the 50-yard line, all that stuff. Yeah, it's jarring, and I think no matter how frequently I or the Buffalo News or yourselves wrote about, hey, these PSLs are coming. It's interesting to me to see people saying, hey, what's with these PSLs? It'd be like, we've been writing about them for 3 years. They're coming. But
like
then
they wanted to put their head in the sand and make believe they weren't coming.
Or that, well, it's Buffalo. It's not going to be a big deal. It's going to be a token thing. I'll spend the $500 on my PSLs. Right. And then we're seeing numbers like 50,000, and I don't know if that's, that's also been a secretive process, which I think a lot of people want to know about. Mark Polenkars, the Erie County executive, has even come out and said we are owed more information about this because of that public trust, that community asset ideal that I was talking about earlier. So I'm going to sit back and wait and see until the average fan, we're getting again, it's shocking now, and the numbers are going to go down and down and down. But it is obviously they're hard to digest. I mean, even for me, I'm not a season ticket holder. This isn't something I'm going to have to face, but you see these numbers and they clearly don't seem to make that much sense because it's something that you've never had to deal with in Western New York before. Every other market, and when there's a stadium built, there are PSLs. If you're a fan of the New York Giants or the Dallas Cowboys or, you name it, pretty much you own a PSL. You had to buy the PSL. And so this is foreign territory for fans, and adjusting and dealing with new realities are difficult to take. And I'm not saying you should just sit there and like it, but you're going to have to sit there and like it. It sucks, but it's the way the business is. It's been baked into the funding for this stadium. It's the expectations, the rollout, everything is there. It's not like the Pegula family or Legends Hospitality or whatever version of Legends it is, the Jerry Jones Steinbrenner owned group that is handling these PSLs. They're going to say, you know what, people don't like it. We probably should just drop it. I had, on a different note, I had somebody approach me recently and say, and I thought it was a joke to begin with, and the guy was serious after a while, after I stopped laughing, and I realized, he says, this stadium's not been built yet. They're building it. They can still put a roof on it. And I'm thinking, probably not. I'm guessing that there's some sort of architectural or engineering thing that you probably have to know.
Like the mathematics, architectural design may not be quite up our alley here.
Steel is actually going up on Abbott Road. They probably needed to know that there was going to be a roof on it. But I eventually back out of those conversations. Like, oh, well, you know what? That's a good point, and then you look for something else to distract you. But I don't think that they're just going to scrap plans, whether it be for a roof or for the PSLs, just because everybody's pissed off about it.
Right. And now your perspective on the state of the Bills, Tim. Obviously, with the Stephon Diggs trade, with all the veterans that they let go this offseason, seems like a transitional year, but you have a quarterback like Josh Allen, you have the coaching staff in place, you have the culture instilled within that locker room. Is this as big of a transition as some view it, or is this kind of just another phase in the build here in Buffalo?
I think it's a soft reset as long as everybody, the leadership, again, the core leadership. I'm not talking, we lost a lot of people who have or were wearing C's last year or who had in the past, Tre'Davious White or, hell, I mean, there are a lot of captains. But we have Brandon Beane still in place. His top lieutenants, he didn't lose anybody like he did a couple of years ago with Joe Shane he does have top assistants constantly interviewing, but they're all back. That brain trust is there. Of course, I'll spit it out. Of course, the coaching staff is almost entirely intact. And Josh Allen and the offensive line. And, you have all kinds of these units. You have great linebackers in Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano. Yes, the defensive backfield is going to be totally revamped. Taron Johnson, of course, being one of the best nickel corners in the league. You can rely on him. So the pieces are there. I think this is a navigable transition. I don't think this is, let's hope they make the playoffs this year. And then we'll start worrying about 2025. No, as you said, Alex, it's Josh Allen's team. And as long as he's the quarterback, not only are they shooting for Super Bowls, they're probably still the favorite in the AFC East. And yes, you can talk about the Jets and maybe a full season of Aaron Rodgers changes that. The Dolphins, they lost a lot of talent because they were up against the salary cap. They had to make some financial decisions there. They're different. The Patriots are doing the hard reset. So I do think that the Bills are still the kings of the AFC East heading into 2024.
Yeah, Tim, I totally agree. I'm on the same wavelength. I believe that the Bills have all the pieces to still be a legitimate contender in the AFC. Again, thank you for coming on. Just your final thoughts, anything you have to add, what do you got coming up on Tim Graham and Friends, your podcast, any articles on The Athletic, and, just what's going on in Tim Graham's world?
Oh God, that's a loaded question.
I can't say. I'm working on a couple of things that I can't talk about because I'm not sure how they're going to unfold. I think one story in particular, it's hard to tease without giving substance to it, but I think there's one story that's going to be a big eye opener regarding sports here in Western New York. Podcast, I don't know. I think we're going to wait and see what the Bills do in the draft. Maybe I do a podcast after the first round. Jonah and I will maybe do something on Friday morning. We probably should have done one yesterday, but I was tied up with these other stories I'm working on. We probably should have done one on Lindy Ruff coming back. But here's the thing about podcast, boys. You're now committed. The idea of doing it and then making the schedule and, hey, when do you have time to do it? And I don't know, I got this going on. And of course you guys do work together. So you can have your schedule. Alex can just say, no, you're doing this now. I guess I can't do that with Jonah, but anyways, you're committed now, boys.
Enjoy the ride. Pot committed, as they say. The chips are in the middle of the table.
You have to do it. The people will demand it.
Hey, the people want right here, right now, live Buffalo football talk, and we are here to offer it.
Great name, by the way. Great name. Some podcasts, it's tough to you can't necessarily brand it. Can you use the word Bills? I know that some do and probably don't get in trouble for it, but I think legally you're probably not supposed to. There's all kinds of different things regarding names, and to have that sitting right there, it was great. Great choice.
It did take us quite a while, but
what were some of the rejected?
We're not the sharpest tools in the shed, but we were able to get this one done.
What were some of the rejected titles for the show?
Some that were left on the cutting room. Say again, AJ.
So we threw out everything. I was using AI to try and figure out names like Buffalo Football Podcast. It gave us some like the Gridiron Chronic. There was a bunch of different ideas that we threw out there, but then Alex
we used our initials, the ABC analysis, but we wanted something to tie it to the Bills, tie it to the fan base, and I think Ian, you're confirming this. I think we made the right choice.
Love it.
Well,
I'm glad you're doing it.
I love you, Tim, for coming on with us. Thank you
I love you, Alex.
Thank you
And
for
I love
being
AJ.
up.
I love you
Thank
too.
you for being up, as you said, and looking alive for us and giving us that great content as you always do.
Thanks for having me on. I'm honored that
All right,
I'd be on your first show.
We'll see you soon.
Thank you, Tim.
Take care, guys.
All right, AJ, our first two guests of the show in the books. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll bring in our final guest, the one and only Del Reid, 2023 Buffalo Bills Fan of the Year. Won't want to miss it. We'll be right back.
What's up, Bills fans? Where would you rather be than right here, right now outside Highmark Stadium, where the Batavia Daily News and Livingston County News has some big news to announce.
Right here, right now. Live Buffalo Football Talk with me, Ajay Cybulski, alongside my co-host, Alex Brasky.
Each week, we'll take a look inside the Buffalo football scene, including all the comings and goings from Orchard Park. Presented by the Batavia Daily News and Livingston County News.
Join us on Wednesday night for our pre-draft special, live at 8 p.m.
All right, now joined by Del Reid, Buffalo Bills fan legend and 26 shirts owner. A lot of help for the community, a lot of help for the fan base over the years since the Bills Mafia days when that was in its genesis. And now you've moved forward. 2023 Buffalo Bills Fan of the Year. I can imagine that was quite the experience. Can you discuss with us kind of the start of Bills Mafia and how it's taken on a life of its own and now kind of culminated with that 2023 Fan of the Year award?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me on. I'm honored to be on as part of your first episode. So big deal. So thank you.
Big deal for you being here.
Yeah, so Bills Mafia, give you the abbreviated version because I don't want to go into a whole long story about it. I think a lot of people know, but I will give you the highlights. So in 2011, I made a joke calling us the Bills Mafia. A few of us on Twitter, Bills fans, referencing how we all had been blocked by Adam Schefter the season prior, just for taking gross offense to something that probably wasn't worthy of taking any offense to. But hey, we're Bills fans.
Bills fans, no way. Yeah,
I know, right? No, we have some thick skin. But yeah, so in 2011, I made a joke. I called a few of us the Bills Mafia. It got some laughs. It kind of started to get some traction. Bree and Leslie, who were probably the two my two best friends that I had made on Twitter up to that point. They were kind of part of that genesis. So it went viral, and not intentionally, and then just other fans started using it, and then players started using it, and then Nick Barnett in that training camp of 2011, coming out of the lockout.
Linebacker.
A big free agent signing from the Super Bowl champion Green Bay Packers, right? Yep. So he saw the term, he embraced it, kind of helped push it forward a little bit. Other players, Aaron Williams, Stevie Johnson, Fred Jackson, they all started adopting this term. Eventually the media started using it, which was really weird. The first time you actually heard the term Bills Mafia said on ESPN in some random sports center back and forth. I think it was Steve Levy, I think, was the first one I remember hearing say it.
New York guy.
Yeah. So, and then, like I said, the media used it. And then eventually in 2020, the Bills adopted it as the name of the fan base, which is kind of weird because when it first started, going back to 2011, 2012, it was a small segment of Bills fans that were using it, and a lot of other Bills fans on social media made fun of the fans that used the term Bills Mafia. They used to call us Burls Mafia. But it's just kind of funny how it's grown now and it's kind of encapsulated everything. It's a lot like, having a kid, watching it grow up, and then leave the house, and kind of Bills Mafia belongs to everybody at this point. So it's weird and surreal to this day being at the stadium and hearing somebody over the loudspeaker say "Bills Mafia, get on your feet" or something like that. It's just it'll never not be weird. But so then take us into 2023, and I was named the Bills Fan of the Year, which is kind of very humbling. You walk into a stadium on game day, and there's 73,000 other people that could be Fan of the Year. We're all diehards. but I wasn't going to turn it down. So they had
that's a once in a lifetime opportunity there.
Oh, absolutely. That's how I've described it. They had Stevie Johnson present me with, that honor, since he was the genesis. I neglected to mention that, like, his dropped pass against the Steelers in overtime in 2010. So our stories are wrapped together. So it felt so perfect that they had Stevie be the one. It was really, they made it really special, and I was completely surprised by the reveal. Like, people have seen that video and they say, "Did you really not know?" I have no idea. Like, I'm pretty easy to get stuff by. Like my wife threw a 40th birthday party for me several years ago, and I was completely oblivious. She was like pulling money from our bank account and like just like all these like shady things. Like, it's assuming I'm gonna find out and notice it. Like, it's like right now I don't have a lot of faith in our personal finances, but I'm glad I was able to get away with it. So, the Bills told me that they're having me come in and just talk about like Bills Mafia and the start of that and everything. I fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. But they made it really special. It was really cool. So to that end, I got to go to the NFL honors leading up to the Super Bowl. Got to spend 4 or 5 days in Vegas. Got to go to the Super Bowl. Everything about the Super Bowl experience is epic and amazing and exactly what you would think it would be. It was great. I've been talking for a while, so I'll shut up now. You might have a question or two that came up there.
Yeah, Del, I'm glad that you were obviously nominated for that. You're such a big influence in the Bills Mafia community, and you give so much to Bills fans everywhere, and you're always supporting Bills Mafia. And on the same track of Bills Mafia with this upcoming NFL draft, from a fan perspective, obviously Bills Mafia is rampant. They're all on the wide receiver train. You see Jeremy White from WGR 550 kind of starting it all, and now everyone's just kind of on board. For you personally, and maybe speak for the fan base, what are you hoping the Bills do tomorrow night to add to this perennial contender?
I'm conductor on that train if Jeremy will let me up front there with him. Like, yeah, choo-choo. I am all about a wide receiver. Joe Pinzone, Buffalo Wins on Twitter, he and I have a long-standing text message thread going back and forth where we just talk about the offensive doom. And that's all we want. You have – I think I tweeted about this after the loss to the Chiefs in January. I said, listen, you have a unicorn under center. You have a generational talent, something that Buffalo has never seen. Like, for what Josh Allen is, we've never seen that. And why wouldn't you just like build as much talent around him as possible? Like, my whole mantra has been score 50 points every game, challenge the other team to score 51. That's my thought. And Sean McDermott has proven you're gonna get me ranting now. Sean McDermott has proven
why we brought John Del.
You could just I'm not saying that Terrell Bernard or even AJ Klein. I'm not calling them Jags. They're not just a guy, but he's proven that he can take a player and plug them into a spot into his defense, and that player will see success. And that, in my mind, works against the idea of like, why would you draft early when you have this great scheme where so many players over the past 7-8 years now have stepped in and succeeded. And that's a credit to Sean McDermott and his coaching and his scheme. So let's lean on that. I'm not saying don't draft any defense, whatever, but like, let's lean on that ability that he has to maximize the scheme and to coach up everybody that comes onto the field. And let's just put as much raw talent around Josh Allen as possible. I understand like that he's going to put the team on his back. That's the franchise quarterback's job. But let's get him as much high-end talent as possible so that let's just run through this league. And Josh Allen is getting older, and he's not always literally going to be able to run through the league like he has for his career. He's eventually going to have to like start being a little bit mindful if he wants to have some longevity. So let's get some receiving talent around him. Like, they did a great job. I mean, with James Cook, he's a great pass-catching running back. They've done
when he's able to hold on to the ball, that is.
Hey, he holds on to it better than I ever would on the field. So I'm not here to judge. But Dalton Kincaid last year, let's get some of that talent around Josh, and let's just, like I said, score 50 points a game.
All right, Del, choo-choo, the wide receiver train in full effect. Now, moving backward a little bit, did the trade of Stephon Diggs influence kind of your full steam ahead approach to the wide receiver train? I'm sure it did, letting go of the team's number one wide receiver, kind of that whole saga that transpired. What was your perspective on on the trade of Stephon Diggs and the impact that has on how the Bills might view this upcoming draft?
Yeah, I was on the train, but I only started using the conductor term once Stephon Diggs was traded to Houston. Yeah, I was shocked when that happened. I honestly thought with his contract, he was immovable. They weren't going to move. Like, I remember I must have tweeted it like 5 or 6 different times or retweeted people that were saying it. Like, he's not moving. They have too much. He's a sunk cost at this point. You know, you're not doing that to your salary cap. So to that end, like, I don't know what that says about a player. If a team is willing to eat that much just for him to not be on the roster, and I'll let everybody draw their own conclusions there. But yeah, I was really surprised. Not upset with it, not upset. I mean, the Bills were 5-5. The Bills have not won a Super Bowl with Stephon Diggs. They never won a Super Bowl anyway, but he's not delivered a Super Bowl. They were 5-5 at one point, and ended up obviously running off all those wins to get to where they did against Kansas City in the playoffs. He was not a huge difference maker during that run. I'm not slighting him as a player or anything. It is what it is. Look at the stat sheets. Look at what happened. You had Kansas City players saying that, no, we did not double team him and stuff like that. So I'm not upset like some fans were with the Stephon Diggs trade. I was very surprised, but I'm ready for them to bring somebody in who can excel in that space. And I've heard people talk about trading for Ayuk or Jefferson or these different things you see on Twitter. Like those are expensive players. If you're able to, obviously the draft is a bit of a crapshoot. It's not a bit of it; it's very much a crapshoot. But if you're able to nail a first round pick receiver, that's very manageable for the next 4 or 5 seasons. So, that's my thought on that.
Yeah, nice cost controlled wide receiver for Josh Allen, especially. Again, he's really ascending into his like peak. I wouldn't say he's at his peak yet, maybe, but he's getting there. He's almost there. He's going to be there. He'll get to work with a wide receiver 1. Now, Del, going back to the draft, what are you doing on the draft? Any festivities you got going on, and what is the draft like for you?
I think the draft every year is kind of different for me. I don't really have a set tradition. I remember in the 2018 draft when we knew the Bills were drafting a quarterback, but we just didn't know who it was going to be. We had a shirt designed for 26 shirts for every possible option. So we had a Mayfield shirt, we had a Darnold shirt, we had a Rosen shirt. We even had a Mason Rudolph shirt. We wanted to make sure we had it ready. But this year I'm actually going to be in Detroit, so I'll be in attendance with the Bills, the inner circle or whatever they call it, with the fans up, on the field.
You are the definition of inner circle, my friend.
I don't know about that. That's what they call it. That's their term. But I'll be
end of the year. That's red carpet type stuff.
Yeah, well, I don't know, whatever. But I'll be there. My daughter's
making Del blush here. I apologize.
It'll be fun. It'll be a good time. We'll see, what opportunities lie in terms of cool stuff that happens on Thursday night. But very much looking forward to it. Never attended a draft before. Should be fun.
New stuff every month, it seems, within this Bills Mafia sphere. Del, to conclude this segment, why don't you talk to us about 26 Shirts, all the work that you've done throughout the community for all the various causes that you've helped raise money for, and the way that you've linked that back to the city and the fan base and everything that there is to do with Buffalo. Just how exciting of a career has this been for you to express your creativity that way in such a way that helps other people?
Yeah, weird. This was not supposed to be my career. I was supposed to work as a web developer for 30 years and retire and move to Florida or something, whatever retired people do. But obviously with 26 Shirts,
it seems like this is a little bit more exciting of a venture.
This is better. This is better
Yeah.
for sure. So, so started it in 2013 with just an idea. I mean, even in the middle of the drought, Bills fans are insatiable when it comes to merch and wanting to rep the team that they love. So I knew that we had something there. And so, I was going to do a 1-year project, 26 shirts, 26 different families that we would support during that first year or during that year. And then it turned out that year was the first year. Decided to do it for a second volume. Ended up getting laid off during that time. Was really falling in love with just everything about this, 26 shirts, with helping these families, meeting these families, the creative process, working with artists. It was awesome. So decided to try that full time, and that was 2015, and here we are now. So it's a huge honor to be able to play the role that we do in the Western New York community. We love our teams, we love our fellow fans, we love our city, we love our region. I feel dirty even making that joke about moving to Florida someday. I don't think I could ever move there. I'd love to visit when I can, but this is home. So, it's just been a lot of fun, and we're closing in on $2 million that we will have been able to raise in the first 10 plus years. So very much looking forward to that.
What a wild ride it's been for you, Del. I'm sure there's many more stories to tell, but thank you for taking us in, giving us a look through what it's been like for you, your fandom and your business there at 26 Shirts. I can imagine it's only going to get better from here. And thank you for joining us on our first show, bringing a little bit of legitimacy to right here, right now. And we hope to have you on again.
Yeah, Del,
Awesome.
Thank you for everything, and thank you for coming on. I greatly appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. And like I said, it's an honor to be a part of your inaugural show. So I'll come back anytime and chat with you guys.
All right, the one and only Del Reid. Thanks a lot. Well, that'll do it for the debut show right here, right now, live Buffalo football talk. We'd like to thank our guests, Matt Parrino, Tim Graham, and Del Reid, for joining us. Also, we'd like to thank you, the viewer, for tuning in. Hopefully you'll join us each week as we bring the comings and goings from Orchard Park. AJ, it's been a fun show, some opinions shared, some discussion had. Any parting thoughts or reflection on what we heard from our guests here tonight on Right Here, Right Now?
Yeah, it was a great debut show. Really enjoyed it. Again, thank you to Matt, Tim, Del for joining us on this debut show. Really looking forward to what's to come. But yeah, Matt, I thought really brought some good information regarding the draft. I think the idea that the Bills parting ways with that 2025 second round pick next year would be interesting, or keeping it and parting ways with the first round pick because of the fact that Minnesota might not be as good of a team. And you're hoping the Bills are good next year, or at least Brandon Beane is, so they'll still be in that late first round. If you part ways with that first round pick for next year to trade up, you still have that pick in the top 40, 45 of the Vikings struggle. And again, they're still looking for a quarterback, so who knows what goes on in Minnesota. And then, yeah, Tim, obviously with the stadium news, some couple of good nuggets there talking about the PSLs. And I agree with this sentiment about when the time comes with the PSLs, the prices will drop. And I think people will be more open to it. And I've always thought, like, in 2026, when the stadium's opening, the debut game, the first game of the season, that stadium is going to be sold out, packed, and no one's going to be really complaining about the PSLs at that point. Sure, there might still be some, but people love Bills football too much to really, when it comes down to it, care. And then again, Del Reid, hope he has fun in Detroit at the draft. That's obviously going to be a fun experience for him, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does with 26 shirts, the shirt that he comes out with after for the first round pick. That should be fun. So yeah, 3 guests, a lot of different perspective and exciting things. And again, we'll have our spiels and we'll go back and forth and share our opinions, but bringing in guests with new perspective is always a good thing and a good way to start this right here, right now, live Buffalo Football Talk pod.
Yeah, reflecting on the show, Matt brought a lot of good information about the draft, and he's really locked in. He and Ryan Talbot on the Shout podcast, so really great to gain his perspective. And Tim with the PSL talk, my family goes back years and years as season ticket holders, all the way back before the Super Bowl years. My father and his father went to the first Super Bowl together, watched the Bills lose, of course. And watch what some of these longtime fans may have to go through watching those long-standing traditions that they've had, going to Bills games every Sunday, now Monday, Thursday, whatever day it is, and watching those traditions go by the wayside just because they're being priced out, very difficult to watch. But hopefully there's some resolution with that, and the longtime fans that have stuck around through thick and thin are able to continue their fandom on site at the stadium, whether it be at Highmark or the new stadium with the PSLs. Finally, we'll go back to the draft, AJ, coming up first round tomorrow night on Thursday. Let's give our predictions on where we think the Bills will go with number 28. I think that they're going to trade up. That's going to be my prediction for Rome Odunze, your boy, the wide receiver from Washington. I steal your thunder on that a little bit?
I'm going to say, no, you didn't. I'm going to say that the Bills stay at 28, and they're going the Texas route. To one of the Texas boys, Xavier Worthy, the speedster, or Adonai Mitchell, who, again, I mentioned the two names I mentioned previously in the show during the beginning of the show. That's where I think the Bills go. I think Worthy speed, Joe Brady can figure out a way to utilize that. And then Adonai Mitchell is just that typical boundary receiver, 6'2", again, great speed, great long speed, great ball tracking. So everything you want in a receiver. But again, hey, who knows what happens? Bean has traded up in the last 2 years. He's been very aggressive in years past. He wants to get his guy. And I don't think Brandon Bean will go to bed on Thursday night knowing that he didn't get the guy he wanted. I think he's going to go to bed knowing that they got the guy that the Bills wanted to add. So it should be a fun week ahead. A lot of discussion, and I'm looking forward to talking about it with you, Alex, on the Right Here, Right Now live Buffalo Football Talk podcast moving forward.
Yeah, we're going to have to get Dell back in here to conduct the wide receiver train. Choo-choo, full speed ahead toward the first round on Thursday night. But what a show, the debut show here on Right Here, Right Now. Again, thank you for joining us. Visit thedailynewsonline.com for complete draft coverage from myself and AJ, and we'll see you next time.
Peace out.
You're listening to Right Here, Right Now, live Buffalo football talk presented by Batavia Daily News and Livingston County News.